Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys joining me for today's video. And sort of have been having some requests lately, guys. People have been wanting more content here on Advanced Bass Fishing. You know, for the past year we've done one video a week, a little bit longer format video. But I've had some people reaching out about wanting some more advanced tips. So what I think I'm going to do moving forward here is I may a couple times a week I'm going to throw you guys something out like this, like a shorter conversation on some more advanced theory in bass fishing. And then we'll still do the longer video once a week, but I sort of like to take a moment, a couple days a week maybe, and throw you guys some bones out there regarding some what I consider some more advanced aspects of bass fishing. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about what I call the philosophy of flipping cover, shallow water cover, because it is a philosophy. So we're going to get into that in depth in today's video. Also, guys, before we get started, just one thing: if you guys like the content here on Advanced Bass Fishing and you want to help the channel out, the best way you can do that is to hit that subscribe button. And also, please use and bookmark my Tackle Warehouse link in every video description. If you guys use and bookmark that link for your fishing tackle, that's a great way to support the channel. Much appreciated there. Okay, guys, I'm going to say, my two favorite ways to catch bass are flipping and throwing a jerk bait. And if you ask me, Randy, okay, what is your absolute number one favorite way to fish? That would be flipping a jig in shallow, heavy cover. And what I want to talk about today, guys, is understanding when you're breaking down a piece of shallow cover to fish. And I want to specifically talk about some type of a laydown tree or some type of shallow wood object in the water. And then also talk about maybe some type of flooded cover, like a flooded bush or a flooded tree, which tend to be two of the top structures to flip in. You can flip anything, guys. You can flip a bare bank, you can flip docks, you can flip an isolated stump. But I want to talk a little bit more about the complex pieces of cover in terms of, lay down trees, blow down trees, flooded cover, and maybe we'll get into grass a little bit. Okay, first of all, one of the things you have to understand is that, there's going to be fish in and around shallow cover all the time. And when you're flipping and pitching, you're trying to dissect and you're trying to put your bait in that part of that structure to generate the strike. What I'm talking about here, let's say, for example, you're back in a major creek arm and you're working down this bank, and maybe you've caught, maybe there's an isolated tree or an isolated log every, 30 or 40 feet, and you've been working down this bank, and maybe you've caught a couple fish just randomly pitching, around a log or stump or whatever. And then you look up in front of you, and there's this beautiful looking lay down tree in the water. It's like got a lot of limbs on it, a lot of places for the fish to hide. I can promise you there's 100% certainty that there's fish in that lay down tree. You just have to figure out how to generate the strike with your flipping and pitching, presentation. Now, another conversation goes into the lure. As far as the lure category, sometimes they want a jig, sometimes they want a soft plastic, sometimes they want a worm, sometimes they want a green worm, sometimes they want a black worm. There's a lot of variables as far as the best lure to pitch in there. But what you have to understand, and the meat of this video, is that you have to be able to mentally break down that piece of cover to determine where you want to put your bait at, for the most part. So here's what I want to get into a little bit. When you look at a lay down tree in the water, or say a flooded bush in that water, you can't really look at that piece of cover as an entirety. Like, don't look at that lay down tree in the water as the whole lay down tree. You have to break it down into sections. So for example, if you have a lay down tree in the water and you've got the larger part of the base of the tree is like up on the bank, and then you've got the more tiny limbs go out into deeper water, and you got branches coming off of it. Each segment of that particular tree is sort of a little mini target within itself. So let's break it down into three areas. When I see a lay down tree in the water, I'm looking, number one, at the base section where it's close to the bank. Then I'm looking for the mid part of that and the mid part of the tree, and then I'm looking for the outer perimeters. Now, the fish, as far as where they're positioned in that particular tree, there's a lot of different variables. The main variable, or the two main variables that are interconnected there, are the water visibility and how the bank slopes off. In other words, how deep the water is right where the tree enters the water in relationship to how deep the water is at the very end of the tree when it's in the waters. If you're on a real flat bank, sometimes the end of the tree is only going to be in 2 foot of water. If you're on a steep bank, you could have the the base of the tree be in 2 foot of water right against the bank, and the outer perimeter may be in 15 feet of water. Just it's all relative to that. But regardless, the fish are going to be in different zones of there based upon that bank angle. So what you need to do is, a lot of people say when you're flipping and pitching, in a piece of structure like that, you need to hit the outside targets first. You need to pick those fish off, they're on the outside before you go into the meat of it. This is not what you want to do, guys. What you want to do is you want to look at that tree and you want to look at the 3 different sections I told you, and you want to put your bait in the premier spot of that particular laydown tree. It doesn't matter where it's at. And what the premier spot is it's the place on the tree that has the most complexity to it. In other words, you've got more limbs around this particular area. You may have a mix of large limbs and small limbs. You need a place on there that when you look at that particular area, it stands out a little bit. And that is where you need to put your bait in. Sometimes it can be on the edge of a tree. Sometimes it could be in the smack dab middle of the tree. Sometimes it could be up against the root section. I'll give you guys a prime example here. I was fishing a tournament at Lay Lake in Alabama, and I was fishing laydown trees way up the river. And these river laydowns I was fishing, the banks were undercut against the bank. So the bank dropped off almost vertical where it entered the water, and then it dropped off to maybe 10 feet on the outside part of the tree. Now in that situation there, every one of the fish that I caught were literally right where the tree entered the water because of that undercut bank. It was like a sharp drop there, and that was the best looking part of the tree by far. I mean, that's where my first pitch went into. And then I've had other situations like I almost won the Bassmaster Classic down in High Rock Lake in 1998, where Denny Bauer won the tournament. I finished 3rd in that classic, and I was flipping laydowns in that particular tournament, but they were on super shallow water on a flat bank. So the part where the tree entered the water was about the same depth as the depth of the tree on the outside part of it. So therefore, when you have a uniform depth and you have pretty much uniform cover where there's not a lot of complexity, they can be anywhere along there. So that's where you have to really just take your time and pick apart every single place on a particular laydown tree or whatever cover that you're fishing. One of the things about it that you're going to find is when you have a piece of cover that doesn't have an obvious complexity to it, those fish can literally be anywhere, and you need to dab that jig or that soft plastic on about every 12 inches along that whole cover if it doesn't have anything that stands out to it. If it has something that stands out to it, go right into the best looking area. Another good example would be a boat dock. If you pull up to a boat dock, it's got some piers on it, and the angle of the sun was positioned where there was some sun hitting most of the dock, but there was little shade pockets. That little shade pocket is where you need to put your bait at for sure. So from that standpoint, you just need, every single tree is different on how they're laid up there. Now, if you're fishing some type of a bush, say a flooded bush, something like that, and you've got this gnarly buckbrush or flooded willow tree or anything like that, it's a little bit different, because sometimes those fish will position in that particular bush based upon how the bush is structured. So for example, I've seen tournaments where I could pattern the bushes based upon how green the leaves were or how many dead branches were on it. So I remember one tournament, I won a Central Pro-Am tournament down at Beaver Lake in Arkansas in April. I was flipping flooded bushes in that tournament. And the bushes, it was in April, so some of the bushes were dead in the water, some of them were green, some of them had a few little limbs on it, a few little green places and dead limbs on them. But in that particular tournament, there was thousands and thousands of bushes, but I got onto a pattern where you'd have one bush in the water, and you might have half of the bush had some green leaves on it and the other half did not have any green leaves on it, I got to where I could pattern, and I'd have to put that jig right at that point where the dead leaves, or excuse me, where the dead limbs started and the green leaves started. They weren't in the green leaves, they weren't in the dead leaves, they were right along that break right there. And after I caught 2 or 3 fish just randomly pitching, I sort of figured that out. So pay attention when you're pitching and flipping. You need to pay close attention to where your bites come, because usually you can pattern that on some type of on shallow structure. Another thing with that is you can't overlook the aspect of being stealthy. When you're flipping and pitching, you are close to the fish. Sometimes you're only 10 foot away from a fish and they know you're there. I mean, I don't care if you paddle up there with a paddle, they know you're there. And the level of aggressiveness that a fish is going to show to your bait is directly connected when you're pitching and flipping to how quiet you are. So one of the biggest recommendations I can give you guys is turn your electronics off and keep your trolling motor on low speed and keep it at a minimum, using it at an absolute minimum. And you need to really get good learning how to glide into cover. So if you've got a good piece of cover coming up in front of you, don't stay on your trolling motor until you're right there. Glide up there easy with your trolling motor and then turn it off and try to let the momentum of the boat carry you into that piece of cover where you can make your accurate presentation. You'd be surprised how many more fish you catch. A lot of people are noisy in a boat. They have their trolling motor on too high of a speed. They get too close to the cover. They're talking in the boat. They're rocking the boat. They're digging around in tackle, and all that is going to spook the fish to some extent. So really, really be stealthy. But the main thing I wanted to get in this quick video, guys, is when you're pitching and flipping, take time to really study that piece of cover and try to study where the high percentage areas are at, and that's going to give you a lot more success. So anyway, I hope it helps out. We'll talk to you later.